Welcome back to the Blend podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ruff, and in this episode, we're covering a topic I know many of you have been asking for more information on: the Blend Awards. Open to independent garages across the UK and Ireland, the Blend Awards include a Garage of the Year award divided into 3 categories for garages with 1 to 4 staff, garages with 5+ staff, and multi-location operations. There is, of course, the hotly contested Staff Recognition Award as well for those who go above and beyond. The deadline for entries is on Friday the 8th of August, and you can place your entry by going to the Blend website. The question is, though, what are the judges looking for, and why should you bother entering in the first place? Well, I'm pleased to be joined by fellow Blend Award judges Hayley Pells, Policy and Public Affairs Lead at the IMI, and Andy Crook of Atomic Success. Together, we'll be sharing some tips on what makes a strong entry and explaining why this is more than just a physical award. Hayley, we'll start with you to get your thoughts on what you think sets the Blend Awards apart from others in the industry.
Awards are a really crowded segment now, aren't they? For all types of business, not just automotive. And I think the reason I was so excited to get involved with these awards from their inception is how the Blend community and the Garage Hive community have really built something for themselves, that peer-to-peer support I've not seen in many other places. And the celebration between people who are all going for the same award, it's that genuine pleasure that somebody has won that award and it doesn't have to be yourself. I think that's what I'm really here for, is to be part of that magic. It's infectious. I love to see that lift as you climb philosophy and that learning, not just from what works, but what doesn't work. Sharing those pain points, finding those common themes. And I think it's been an enormously powerful space that has enabled people to grow professionally, but also create friendships that seem to be long-lasting and sincere. I love the Blend Awards, love being involved with it.
Andy, you've been on 1 or 2 judging panels in your time, so what are your thoughts specifically on the Blend Awards?
I'm more or less going to echo what Hayley said. It's the community aspect of the whole event, not just the awards, that makes it different. That's what sets it apart. If it has a unique feature, it's the community. It's the bringing of people together, and it doesn't matter the size of your garage, what garage management system you have. None of that matters at the Blend. What matters is that you come and you share your experience, good and bad, and everyone learns, and it raises the standard of the industry for doing so. And that's why I'm always passionate about attending and always passionate about having the opportunity to judge, because it's the, believe it or not, when you're judging, you see some great ideas as well. So and it fuels me for when I do my other podcasts, for ideas. When you see the stuff that comes out, some of it is just so unique. So what some of the solutions people have to all of our common problems is truly, I think, inspirational.
I have to agree with you both, and add that for me, the really special thing is seeing those entrants that come back year on year and seeing how their business has progressed since their last entry. I suppose really the process of entering awards is actually an excellent opportunity to review your business as a whole and see how far you've come over the past 12 months and perhaps also identify areas for improvement. So that in itself is an excellent reason to enter.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say there's two elements to putting yourself forward as opposed to being nominated, which I think are positive, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for other people to vote for you. The fact that you have to take that step puts you in a position where you're considering yourself to be good, and now you're about to be measured, which means that you have to then take stock of what you've done. And what I like, as you mentioned before, Mike, about the Blend as an award, is it's not what you've done for the last 10 years. It's what you've done in the last year that really counts in a lot of the ways that the Blend is judged, because a lot of the questions are focused on the last 12 months. So you're taking stock of what you've done this year or the previous 12 months to get to where you are now. So there's the first element. So you've got that, you're actually accountable for what you wanted to achieve and what you have achieved in the last 12 months. The other element of it is just by being nominated is social proof enough. If you want to get it in your marketing channels, you want to let everybody know that you got to the final, if you like. Even that you just tell people you've applied. That in itself is almost a qualification that you're probably doing okay. And winning isn't everything. I believe actually just taking part in the award, writing it out, and if you do it every year, you will see a journey of transformation because you are driving the standard up.
I think it gets to the heart of why these awards matter. It's not just about recognition, it's about progression. Every time you enter an award, you're effectively challenging yourself to be better than you were the year before. And I really don't think we should underestimate the ripple effect that can have, because the more garages that go through the process of taking stock, setting goals and striving to improve their businesses, well, it's going to lift the standard of the entire industry. Now, I'd like to get into the judging process specifically for the Blend Awards. And the first thing to say here is that entries are anonymised. Why is that important, Andy?
Unfortunately, lots of people know me and I know lots of people. And I don't want that to have any impact on the judging process. So if it's anonymised, that bias is removed. Now, you could argue that if by looking at what's written and the level of knowledge I have for some of the businesses might mean that I actually still can tell who it is. But it's very, very difficult from the questions that have been asked for me to identify a business because... And I want it to be that way because I want to completely remove that bias. And I'm in a fortunate or unfortunate position, depending on how you look at that, where I do get to chat to and speak to lots of garage owners, and I do sort of get to have a feel for some of the businesses. So if we can remove any of that bias, that's the sort of the effort behind that.
We don't do this in collaboration. So not only are the submissions anonymised, each judge then submits their findings independent of the other judges. So there's no swaying of opinion or advocating for one business over another. This is an independent review done by individuals that are then submitted.
Hayley, where do you start once you get hold of those entries?
So for myself, when I'm reviewing entries, I am a stickler for word count. It's my first pass. Before I've even read the content, I'm looking at the word count. If it is over word count, it's, for my review, it's an instant dismissal for consideration. Because I don't know whether, Andy's also ex-motorsport. I'm a real stickler for a fair playing field. So if you're going to go over word count, I would want to know, well, if every business had that word count, what more could I learn about them? So to take that grab for extra word count is an instant no for me. My second pass then is I create a matrix and I look at the question that's asked, and I then look to see if the answer answers the question. And although that sounds really sort of obvious, you'll be surprised how many times you'll see lots of good content within the submission, but it's not actually answered the question. So rather than looking for a winner, the first steps for my process is to remove the applications that can't move forward. So in my mind, it sounds really corny, but everybody's a winner coming in, and I'm looking for the reasons to remove that submission rather than which one is better than another for my first passes of consideration. I'm really interested to hear, Andy and Mike, both of your views, because it's not something we've ever discussed. It's because of the independence of the review.
You're right, and this is the first time all three of us have got together to really chat this over, so it's interesting. And it's interesting you say you first look at the word count, Hayley, because the one slight frustration I get is when an entry goes drastically under the word count. I'm talking about those one sentence responses, and it's such a shame because they obviously see the value of entering, so why not spend just a little bit of time really thinking about the questions and evaluating your business, as we've already touched upon?
I really must share an anecdote. So I was judging a different competition, still in automotive, but where you nominate the people rather than apply yourselves. And same process, all of the submissions are anonymised. So you're viewing the submission on its own merit, and the submission read, "Do your own research." And I was like, well, I can't. So if there is a word count of 600 words, I can't agree with Mike more, don't put in one sentence.
For anyone who's yet to apply, use the word count, be clear, be proud, and answer the question fully. That's how you give yourself a fighting chance. And honestly, just doing so puts you ahead of a surprising number of entries. Andy, talk us through the first step in your judging process.
I try, wherever possible, to do them all at once. It's not always possible, it depends on the number of entries, but certainly I'll go category by category, and I try and... So effectively, whatever frame of mind I'm in, or whatever the thing that's on the forefront of my mind on that day, everyone gets the same opportunity. That's why having obviously a time limit for entries is important, because then I can then plan when I'm going to do it. I normally make myself a cup of tea, a strong cup, and dive in. And not dissimilar to Hayley, but slightly different. I look for not just have they answered the question, but I also look for have they answered the question without repeating themselves. That's the thing I find frustrating with entries is sort of twofold. Is if they say give 2 examples and you give 3, I'm a stickler for just taking the first 2. If the third one was amazing, unlucky, I don't read it. Well, I read it, but I don't include it in my, because there is a reason why it's laid out the way it is, and a lot of thought goes into it. So that's the first thing. And then if you then give me the same example again, I can't really score that again because I've already scored it. That's the way I look at it, unless there's a particular twist specifically in the answer that means that example can be used, but it can be used to answer that one and that one. If you're effectively repeating yourself, you're not going to get any more points for saying the same thing again. That's I'm quite strict on that. What I want to learn by the nature of the questions and the examples we ask you to give is what I'm looking for. Is are you within that ring fence? So if it's something from the last year, which is a real focus for the blend, is what have you done in the last 12 months? If you're talking about something you did in, the previous to that, once again, I'm like, well, this isn't answering the question. So there's the tip, answer the question. I say it to people all the time. It goes back to when I was teaching. You get some amazing responses, and you do in this environment that don't actually answer the question, which is what Hayley said. But I also look for, have you answered the question without repeating yourself and within the time frame that we've requested.
And you don't need to worry about grammar or spelling. You don't tend to see spelling problems like you used to, because I think spell checks and things have really come along. So it isn't a grammar exercise. It isn't an exercise in judging your writing. It's not an exercise in how well you can spell. So the things that we're looking at is to look at it with fairness, to give everybody the same opportunity, which is why there is the stickler for going over word count, which seems to be a common theme for all of us. So don't worry about the formation of the content. We're looking for, can you deliver to a specific ask?
I had to smile when you said answer the question, Andy, because I know for lots that will be bringing back memories of those school revision classes, but it's genuinely good advice. When I'm judging entries, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm breaking down each question into its key components because there are usually at least 2 or 3 parts to each question, and I'm literally ticking off those individual parts as I read the entry. If the question asks about improvements or results, I'm looking for both. If it asks how you've impacted your team or community, I need to see both elements clearly addressed. The entries with the most ticks, the ones that directly respond to every part of the question, they're the ones that make it through to my next round of judging. So keep that in mind when you're writing. Is what you're saying relevant to what's actually being asked?
If it asks for 2 examples, provide 2. Don't provide 1. That's quite common. It's especially, I think people, what they do is they sit down to do their application and they start, and it's really good at the beginning. First couple of questions are answered really well, and you can see the effort draining away from them as they go along. And the later questions and are sometimes not answered as well. So yeah, my advice in that way, if you do it all at once, make sure that you apply the same amount of effort to each question, and make sure that if it asks for 2 examples, give 2 examples. If it asks for 3, give 3. If it asks for 1, give 1. But make sure the example is relevant to the question. That, I would say, is the best piece of advice I could give to anyone for any of these sort of awards where you're having to provide evidence. Remember, we don't know who you are, so we can't check it. That doesn't mean you can then falsify it, because it's really obvious when it's not sincere. You can just tell. I don't know how. It's some sort of spidey sense judges must have when we can, or you can start smelling it coming off the page. This ain't right. And it's because nobody knows your business as well as you. And therefore, when you talk about it, if you're talking about genuine stuff from within your business, the way it's written is always different than if you're making something up. So, yeah. But it's make sure you put, I would say, equal effort into each question. That would be a great tip.
There is a real skill or almost perhaps a strategy, I think, to entering awards. And I think this has become sort of more evident, I suppose, as the award space has become busier. And there are some very successful businesses that have been very successful at gaining that recognition. And I think it's an important skill set to develop because you're competing every day that you go into business. So if you can nail this skill set, then you're going to take that transferable skill into your business, regardless of whether you win or not. And that is then how you sell your business to the people that count, which are your motorists and the people that you want to work with, because you need to sell that environment in order to attract the best talent and retain them. And you need to sell that business in order to attract the best motorists to support that growing endeavour.
And that's a perfect segue into my next question. Thanks, Hayley. Andy, I'm going to put this one to you first. What should winning garages and indeed shortlisted garages be doing to fully exploit the marketing opportunity when it comes to awards?
Well, you need to make it part of your social proof. That's the sort of one-line answer. But you need to tell as many people in as many ways as possible. And if that's your website, your social media, the local press love a story because they've got nothing to talk about most of the time. So get them involved, get everyone involved that you can think of that can be a voice for your news. Even tell them you've entered. You'll be surprised who turns up, and it very, very quickly a small news story become quite a big news story if it just gains a bit of momentum, and that's it. And think of the act of answering the questions the way I think the questions of the blend are sort of formatted. Your unique selling point, your USP for your business, you're probably writing it out, and then look at that, how you've written it, and maybe look at some of the content on your website and include some of your answers on there. If you have a blog, this is almost like your resume for the year. What did we do this year? Get it on there. And then once you've got it on there, get it on your socials. Once you've got it in your socials, start sharing it, break it down into smaller pieces, repurpose that content, send maybe, some text to the local rag, your community magazine, especially if you advertise in these, because otherwise what you're paying for. Get them to do some advertising for you and shout loud and far about how good you are.
For me, I also found that engagement with the community was really helpful following winning something like an award. If you're invited, or make yourself available to the local college, speak to the apprentices that are coming through, tell them about your journey, what it means to be an award-winning garage, to be an award-winning technician. And that really helps with your talent pipeline and your relationship with the college, because the college is seeing apprentices before you see them quite often. So if they can engage with you and go, we've got a real up-and-coming bright spark, would you consider a place for them? You want to be the first call, don't you, to have access to that talent in your area. So in addition to engaging from a marketing perspective, I think engaging from the community perspective, which again goes back to what Garage Hive is all about. And Gen Alpha is coming. They have very different views on what businesses they want to engage with. So environment, social and governance is big issues, and they will make buying decisions based on how authentic you are. Are you sincere? Are you a real business, or are you just out to exploit people? So they're going to make decisions based on exactly what Andy has said, your social proof. And if you think judging, you develop a high sense of a BS filter, that's nothing in comparison to the generation that's coming through. You use a joke or music that you've ripped from the internet, he will call you out. That sincerity has never been so important, and showcasing the awards and what it means to you, and that journey that you've been through to get to it, and what it means for you following that receiving of the award. All of that storytelling adds to your narrative, adds to your sense of ownership, adds to how you position yourself within the community, and ultimately makes you that sincere business that people can trust.
We've covered the early stages of our judging processes, so let's now talk about the later stages, because that's when, certainly for me, things start to get really tricky, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you go about separating the entries in your good pile.
So for me, I'm sort of always looking for something that's unique, something that's a little bit less orthodox. If someone's doing something a little bit unusual, that always gets my attention. But I don't ignore the tried and tested, the fundamentals of basic business practice. But I got to be honest, I'm always a little bit like, that is that. And if it really is something slightly different, that often gives me the sort of the idea that I'd like to. Often I think, I'd love to know more about that. But the number of examples, the strict word count, maybe prevents from getting the full picture. So what it is that I look for is have you answered, basically if they answered all of the question, followed by the if you like, how unique that is, and how applicable is it to their business. When they give an example and they say they moved the goalpost from here to there, I'm a bit of a stickler for a bit of data. I like that. But as much as that quantitative data is in there, I'm also then, and it's something that I'm not as good at probably as others, is the qualitative data. And then that's where you really start. And I think Hayley's rightly said it becomes it is quite an onerous process once you're getting into the nitty gritty, because you're probably just comparing two exceptional applications. And the difference between them is going to be probably, because I use a scoring system, it's going to be half a point at most. And the difference between the two garages is minute normally, because we can't look at the whole thing. We can only look at the answers they've given, and you're looking for the thing that one spark for me that sets them apart, and that's it.
I think explaining more about the point scoring. So quantitative data is normally quite easy to make a comparable on, but isn't always useful. So if you were to just use a really basic metric in quantitative, it can be something that then excludes a lot of businesses. And the benefit I think of qualitative is when you're engaging in qualitative research, the first thing that you do in order to get that fair comparison is you analyse the data, you code the data, and then once you've coded that data, you can then use that as part of the point scoring process. So if qualitative data is not something that you're familiar with, perhaps that's worth a Google search or something like that to familiarise yourself how you code and pull out themes from qualitative data and understanding what that is. I think some people understand it on a very intuitive level. Some people have a really firm grip on it. And then others, this is perhaps the first time they've heard the term. And I think that does come through with the application sometimes. So if you're thinking of submitting an application, understanding what qualitative data is and how you are going to be judged against your peers, how we would code that data and pull out those themes, I think could really give somebody the edge as to what they would put into their application.
The blend brings together independent garages from across the UK and Ireland, and it's probably worth at this point clearing up a common misconception, because while the early events were Garage Hive conferences, the blend has since grown into something much bigger. It's not been a Garage Hive event for a few years now, and the awards aren't just for Garage Hive users either. This is an industry-wide event that tackles a broad range of challenges and opportunities for independent garage owners. So with that in mind, when it comes to the Blend Awards, why should more garages get involved?
This might be the only yardstick they ever have to measure their business. And if you're sitting on the outside, you never know how well you're doing or how you can improve. So that would be the first thing. If you're just thinking of applying, just do it. Even if you don't submit, go through the process. If you're scared or you think, you have that imposter syndrome, the fact that you've got that far probably means your application was worthwhile. Because if you get that far, even if it wasn't, and you submit it, you're going to get possibly some feedback on your application, and that feedback from the application, don't think of it as, I didn't win the award. Think of it as, I won in this year's business. I won in my award by applying. And then therefore you'll have a yardstick to measure yourself with for the following year, the year after that. And then you might look back at this in 5 years' time and go, look at the distance I've travelled. But you'll have a record of it. If nothing else, it's worth doing for that reason. You will see how far you've come, how much you've learned. By attending the blend, sharing experiences. If you see someone who's got a similar business to yours, who you perceive to be flying, to be doing better than you, go and have a chat with them. You might be pleasantly surprised how close you are to them. It's just that they're doing a better job of telling everyone. And that's basically what this comes down to. Get better at promoting your business.
Hayley, what can industry awards do in general for you as a garage owner? And I'm asking you, of course, because you've been in that position as a garage owner entering your first award, and you went on to win lots and saw the benefits. So interested to find out your thoughts and experiences.
Well, it's an interesting space to be. So you get that initial sugar rush. There's nothing quite like it. You hear your name read out, you can't quite believe it. People are clapping you on the back, and it's elation. It's a fantastic achievement, and you feel all that hard work has paid off, and you celebrate with your team. But there can be another side to it. And I don't know if it feeds into my imposter syndrome or something like that. But then there is that feeling of being held to account for having that recognition, which I don't think is a bad thing ultimately. But your customers can sometimes react to you differently, which is really interesting and something I didn't expect. I thought you were supposed to be good. Well, I am good. I'm qualified, I'm experienced, and I have an active CPD program for my technicians. I invest in my kit, I invest in my building, and I'm recognised by my peers for every indicator to say that I'm good. I'm good. And you would still get those interactions with customers who would have an expectation. And I think Andy's podcasts have been really useful to me about how to manage expectation and what your business is about. And because you have a business doesn't mean that you exist for everybody. And I think that was an important part of my journey as a vehicle technician, was understanding who I was right for. And just because I wasn't right for everybody doesn't mean that I'm no good. And I struggled with that for a long time. And I think when I started applying for awards and being nominated for some, as what was the trend some 20 years ago, things have changed massively now. We now advocate for ourselves much more in these spaces. And I think maintaining that reputation can be as much work as getting the award in the first place. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because as Andy said, it's lifting the bar, isn't it? It's continuously keeping your business at the forefront. And the business of business has never been so business-like. The workshop that my father started in the 70s was a very different animal, and the expectation for him was very different to what the modern motorist wants from a modern business. And I think that's where the Garage Hive community really seats itself, is that forward-facing, investing, continuously improving environment. I think that's what makes a successful business and what drives us to participate in these awards. For me, my experience of entering awards, it's all about showcasing your team and showing that leadership, showing your faith in that team, that you think your team is the best and they deserve to be there, and you're there to fight for them to be there and ensure that they get that recognition that they deserve. That was a really important part of the whole thing for me when I had my own garage. And it's a bit of a humble brag. I've got quite a big trophy cabinet, but the number of awards I didn't win far surpasses the number of awards that I won.
That's such a great point on team morale, Hayley. We've talked a lot about promoting award nominations and wins to your customers, but it's just as valuable an opportunity to celebrate your team, to recognise the hard work and the progress your staff have made over the last year. I've seen how motivational that can be for workshops. Now, we have sadly run out of time, so I'll just wanted to add a huge thank you to both of you, Hayley Pells and Andy Crook, for sharing your insight and experience as judges on the Blend Awards panel. Hopefully, what we've covered today will inspire even more garages to take part and make our jobs as judges that little bit tougher. I look forward to seeing you both at the Blend on Saturday, the 18th of October in Birmingham.
Really looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you.
I want to see everybody else there as well, not just you three or us three.
Oh, I wasn't talking about you two.
Oh, sorry.
No, I want to see everybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We want to see more people than ever at the Blend. New people, people from outside Garage Hive. One of the reasons why I agree to judge is to open it up to everybody. I think this is the event for the independent garage industry.
Don't forget to get your Blend Award entries submitted via the Blend website ahead of the deadline on Friday the 8th of August. Finalists will be revealed on the 8th of September. The winners, well, they'll be announced at the Blend Awards on the 18th of October. Thanks so much for listening to the Blend podcast. If you don't already, please subscribe to the podcast on your usual podcast player. And if you enjoy what we do, why not leave us a review and give us a few stars? Your support really does go a long way to helping the podcast. We'll be back with another episode very soon indeed, and I can tell you now it's going to be a good one. Bye for now.